Hey everybody, welcome back to the basement. Welcome back to the layout. Today we're going to be talking about something that you've probably run into, a debate that you've run into. 3-rail versus 2-rail. And which one gives the better realism, control, smoother operation, or do we have more options? And now we can bring in the new Atlas O-Scale P42. That's going to help us with this debate. Let's do it right here. Crushes trains and things. All right, so before we jump into this too much, let's talk a little bit about the basics of 2-rail versus 3-rail. So in the hobby of O-scale model railroading, we have 3-rail track. This is traditional O-scale model railroading. O-gauge came in 3 rails. And basically how this is designed is you've got your 2 outer rails and they are connected to your ground power. And then the middle rail, that is connected to your power or your hot lead. Then underneath your locomotives, when you're looking at a 3-rail locomotive, you have these things called pickup rollers. You'll see them there on the middle. That picks up the electrical current from that middle rail. Go ahead and set this SD45 back down. That picks up the power from that middle rail, and then the trucks pick up the ground on the outer rails, and that's how you power your locomotive. In the US, this is a very popular track system. Lionel really made it popular way back in the day when it was created. Now, we also have 2-rail. When you're looking at smaller or even bigger scale model railroads, typically you're always going to see a 2-rail track. So it's slightly different. The nice thing about 2-rail track is it's more realistic because most real railroads in the world have 2 rails. There are some that have 3 rails. You're going to see them posted on Instagram every now and again when people want to have the argument with the 3-rail guys that real railroads don't have 3 rails. We get it. We're in model railroading. However, you can't deny the fact that the 2-rail track does look more realistic. Here's the deal. One rail carries your positive power, the other one carries your negative power. So you've got your power and your ground just within 2 rails. There's no center rail running down the middle. The downside of this, it's definitely more complex to wire. I'm not going to get too much into the wiring of this at all today, but if you can manage the polarity, your positive and negative, correctly, then your engines should be able to run very nicely right out of the box if they are 2-rail compatible models. Unfortunately, today we have our first 2-rail model here in the layout. All right, so looking at these track profiles, another thing that you'll notice is the track profile is much more realistic in the 2-rail than it is 3-rail. 3-rail is also called high rail because notice how much higher the rail sits off of the ties. These sit a lot higher. Your wheels are going to have larger flanges on the side. Let's take this coal hopper here from Lionel. You can see those large wheel flanges there on the side to hook onto that really high rail that is provided. Now, if we look at this model from Atlas, this is a 2-rail truck. You'll notice that they're much smaller, realistic looking flanges on this 2-rail model. So again, those small flanges fit nicely on this 2-rail track. If you take those large 3-rail flanges and put them on this 2-rail track, it'll actually bounce along the ties. I know this because I've done some diorama projects, and when I do a diorama, I usually use Atlas 2-rail track. The reasoning is it looks more realistic, and I don't have to worry about wiring it because it's just a diorama. But I put my 3-rail models on this 2-rail track because I don't have any 2-rail models. And again, that's when I've learned that it starts to bump against those ties because of those large wheel flanges. Now, other than the wheel flanges, there's some other differences that you typically get in your 2-rail models. Now, 2-rail is much more quote-unquote scale. So you're not going to get these big, large lobster claw couplers like you see on the 3-rail models. You're going to get scale couplers, say your KD couplers, that you can see here and on the back as well. So they're much more to size and scale. They're not electrocouplers, so you have to throw these manually, but they are scale. You're also going to have fixed pilots. So this truck turns, the pilot does not turn. Now, the fortunate part for this demonstration and this video is I have a 3-rail version of the Amtrak Atlas P42. I'm going to go pull off the wall so we can look at the differences and similarities side by side. Now, we've got both these locomotives on the track. Now, as I mentioned, that 2-rail track has that lower profile. It's usually going to be code 148 or smaller, while 3-rail track is going to be taller, less prototypical. This affects how your rolling stock and engines are going to interact with the rails. If realism truly matters, then 2-rail is going to be the best way to go. However, we can make 3-rail layouts look pretty good, I think. But two rail is going to create a little bit more planning that you're going to have to do to get it to work just right. Now, let's talk about these two models and what the difference is, because they're the exact same tooling. However, this two-rail model does feature some additional details that we don't see on the three-rail model behind it. Now, when you're just glancing at these, first thing that I notice is our coupler up front. So we've got the big lobster claw coupler, where this one here, we've got our scale coupler. Then as we move backwards, the trucks look fairly similar, right? You're gonna have very similar detailing on the trucks. However, our pilot is where the difference comes in. If we were to pick this model up and turn it, you'll see that pilot is not fixed. It moves with that front truck. What that does is it allows this model to navigate tighter radius curves. This model does not. As this truck turns, that pilot stays right where it is. If you have tighter radius curves on your layout, that is going to cause some issues. Where it causes issues is as it goes around curves and the coupler swings, it's going to allow those cars not to get pulled off the track. This coupler only has that much movement to go around curves and pull the passenger cars that this is pulling. Where this one, the truck swings really wide and it can navigate really tight curves, because not only does the coupler move, so does that whole front pilot. Now, yes, I should also mention the rear pilot does the exact same thing. On the three-rail model, that whole rear pilot swings as well. On the two-rail model, it does not. Now, two-rail rolling stock, oftentimes you'll get a few more details around where the couplers are on those pieces of rolling stock, some different MU hosing and things like that. I know on the auto racks that Atlas put out, the two-rail versions definitely had some more details that had to be cut away if you were converting those two-rail models to three-rail. Now, these locomotives don't have so many different added-on details. The main piece is going to be that fixed pilot. And that is the reason why I bought this two-rail model, because I really wanted something that had the fixed pilots and scale couplers. Now, my Metro North passenger cars are three-rail. So what I'll have to do is switch one of the couplers to a scale KD coupler, and that will be my conversion car. So what will happen is one side will connect to the P42. The other ones will continue to be those big lobster claw couplers, unless I decide to go back and change all of them out with scale couplers. I haven't decided to do that just yet. So with these scale couplers, the nice thing is they'll actually connect to your lobster claws like that. So if you have track that's going to go up or down a grade, this might detach, but when you're level, it's good. So I technically don't need to put a conversion car in. I think I'm still going to do that in the long run, but for now, I can go ahead and run this with one of these cars. Now, let's talk about DCS, which is Digital Command System. These Atlas P42s are equipped with DCS, and that brings a whole different level of control. DCS was originally developed by MTH, and it gives you speed control, sound functions, lighting effects, real-time diagnostics of your locomotive, including an odometer. So if you purchase an engine that's MTH with DCS used, you can actually see how many miles, scale miles, that model has on it. Now, here's the good news. Whether you're running two-rail or three-rail, DCS will work with both, but the wiring for the layout of DCS on two-rail is going to take you some more time. Three-rail layouts benefit a similar DCS setup. You can run your feed to the center rail, and that goes pretty quickly. On two-rail, you have to think more like a real railroad with block detection, polarity, and return paths if you have reversing loops. The system is just as powerful, but it demands a little bit more effort up front. Now, keep in mind that Atlas inherited this tooling from MTH. Also, their DCS equipped models behave very similarly, because Atlas got DCS, or the licensing to put DCS in the models, when they purchased the toolings from MTH. So whether you pick two-rail or three-rail, you'll get a great slow speed control, solid audio, synchronized smoke output if you're using, or if you have, let's say, steam locomotives. Diesels are going to be slightly different with regards to synchronized smoke output, because it's just a diesel locomotive. But you will need to have your DCS system updated to handle the latest firmware for the Atlas engine. So if you just got the WTIU, they're constantly coming out with some firmware updates. Make sure you keep that updated, and then you can use the DCS app on a smartphone or tablet to operate these. One add-on that I forgot to mention over there. So these two-rail models are also DCC ready. So if you're operating using DCC, which is a standard two-rail operating system, you can use that. You don't have to use DCS. If you don't have that or you don't want to, you can just use DCC with these Atlas and MTH models, which is nice. Now you may be wondering yourself, Chris, you have 2-rail wheels and no pickup rollers on this 2-rail engine. Well, you are absolutely correct. If we go ahead and turn this over, you will see that I do not have pickup rollers on here, and I've got these really small flanges, and I don't have Atlas track. Now, here's a little secret. 2-rail wheels, or scale wheels, as we will call them, can operate on 3-rail Atlas track. Usually, it works out actually pretty well. I have Gargraves track with Ross curves, so this engine will probably not cooperate because of these small scale wheels. However, Atlas did offer in their previous catalogs the opportunity to buy 3-rail trucks that you can swap these out. So I have these on order to swap these out with 3-rail trucks. They have not come in yet, so unfortunately we're going to have to just listen to this in more of a static display. Quick pause, turns out it does run on my track, which is great. The issue is we get a lot of wheel slippage right now until we change these trucks out. So I'm going to be running this with one of my Metro North cars, because more than that, it's just wheel slipped city. So that's what we're going to do for now. Obviously, these 3-rail rolling stock cars are a little harder to pull. And these Metro North cars are finicky with the electronics, and I think one's still shorting out. So we got to figure that out too. But anyway, back to your normally scheduled. But I do have them on order. And in the box with this engine come the pickup rollers. So what we will do is do a separate video where we convert this to 3-rail, and we will put the pickup rollers right in here. In fact, you can see the hole where the screws are going to go in for that pickup roller. So it's going to be pretty straightforward for us to convert this over once I get those trucks in. But for now, we can put the pickup rollers on, and we can at least listen to this engine later on once we're ready to do so. So let's get back to this 2-rail versus 3-rail. We're looking at visual realism, layout aesthetics. Thinking about the visuals here, if you're building a layout for realism, 2-rail is going to win. As a 3-rail person at heart, sometimes it pains me to admit that, but it's true. 2-rail is going to win. There's no 3rd rail. Track spacing is more accurate. The wheel profiles look like they would be on the real thing. Even the couplers are more prototypical. 3-rail models have larger couplers and compromises in the truck design to handle those tighter curves. Now, this is big. 3-rail trains can navigate sharper curves. We know that, as we said, because of those pilots typically aren't fixed. Now, yes, some 3-rail models do have fixed pilots, but a lot of them don't, especially the diesel locomotive, so they can handle really tight curves. So that means you can pack a layout into a smaller space. So if you're working with a limited space in your room, you want like operational variety, 3-rail might make the most sense for you to go with. It's also a lot more readily available in the United States. If you look at O scale in Europe, you're going to see a lot more 2-rail. In fact, 3-rail is incredibly rare over in Europe because they just model 2-rail a lot more. Their manufacturers produce 2-rail models. So those are one things to keep in mind. Now, these Atlas P42s are great in both formats, but in 2-rail, it feels more like a scale model, where 3-rail, it's definitely going to be more forgiving, especially if you're running on a tighter radius curves or over switches, which is what we do a lot here on this channel. So what we're going to do is I will get this hooked up, and we're going to run it and see what it can navigate on this layout with those scale wheels. But first, I'm going to have to put those pickup rollers on. Now, before we get to that, let's talk about cost and availability. There's always a cost factor. This is not a cheap hobby. 3-rail equipment is usually more available, sometimes cheaper, especially secondhand, where 2-rail is going to be more niche, especially here in the United States. There's a smaller population of people that model O scale in 2-rail. So this Atlas P42 in 2-rail might be harder to find. Fewer retailers are going to stock it. In fact, I could not order this from Train World, who I normally order my trains from, because Train World doesn't sell 2-rail O scale models. I ordered this from Mr. Muffin's Trains because he does pre-orders for those 2-rail models. I do not believe he keeps an inventory of 2-rail, so he doesn't order extra 2-rail to keep in stock. I think he just takes his pre-orders in 2-rail, and that's going to be that. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive to find these things after the fact. A lot of times, if you're seeing things on that are brass models, a lot of those are going to be 2-rail. Your Sunset 3rd rail models are going to be a 2-rail scale model. So what should you choose? Well, there's not really a right or wrong answer. It depends on what you can fit in your layout, what you can fit in your basement or in your layout room. It depends on the ease of access to the hobby as well. You know, if you need something that's a little bit more that's not as cost prohibitive, then 3-rail might be the best way to go. And that's all a relative comment because it's still a very expensive hobby. Now, if you're really going to focus on realism and you're ready to commit the time and effort, 2-rail is going to be unmatched. It's going to give unmatched authenticity and create a really real scene. I have thought about the idea of switching to 2-rail. However, I've got such a fleet of 3-rail models already that doing so is just scary to think about. Plus, I would have to get rid of pretty much all my Lionel legacy models because I can't convert those to 2-rail. And that would be stuck with just MTH and or Atlas, or looking at some other manufacturers. And I really like running legacy models, so I don't think that's going to happen. Best I can do is take the Norm Charbonneau approach of creating such a realistic scene that hopefully we don't see the 3rd rail. All right, so quick conversion here. In the box, you're going to get your pickup rollers, so you can quickly convert this over, at least the pickup rollers, into a 3-rail model. So we're going to go ahead and open this up and show you where these screws are going to go. So there we go. There's your pickup roller, and it is just going to go right there. It kind of fits into place. There's little notches in there. And take our screwdriver. Ta-da, done. All right, so we've got this fired up. I've got my DCS app here. So we're gonna go ahead and roll it out slowly, and we'll do our PFA just to hear what kind of sounds we have. We'll activate.
Now arriving, Metro North.
All right, we'll go through station stops next time. Let's see if we can navigate this switch here with these 2-row trucks.
Now arriving, Metro North.
I'm still stuck in PFA mode here. Yeah, we got through that switch. Let's see if we can back it up through that switch. Go ahead and directions. Shutdown mode just to reset it here. All right, well, that's one switch. See what else it can manage to navigate here.
Now arriving, Metro North. Be careful on the step. Have a nice day. Thank you. May I take you back? Now departing, Metro North. Pardon me. Hurry up now. Be careful on the step. All aboard. go? Yep, we have drinking water and toilets and service. We are ready to move. Ready to pull out.
All right, so 2-rail or 3-rail, what's it going to be for you? And if you're, thinking about getting into the hobby, you have to think about what the operating system is that you're going to want to use. Legacy with Lionel pretty much stuck with 3-rail. DCS only, then you have a lot more of opportunity to switch into a 2-rail format. Just know what you're getting yourself into and do your research beforehand. Leave me a comment. What are your thoughts on the differences between 2-rail and 3-rail? And what are your thoughts on this great new P42 from Atlas? I look forward to highlighting it more in a future video. Once we get those 3-rail trucks in from Atlas, we'll do a conversion video of it with everything but the pickup roller, since those are already on. And we will go ahead and show you what that process looks like and run it around the layout again then. But thank you so much for tuning into this video. Leave me a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe if you haven't. We appreciate that so much, and we will catch you on the next one.